I think it's pretty safe to say that Black Panther Wakanda Forever had a lot riding on it. Not only did this film have to be a follow-up to the first Black Panther, which was the only Marvel film to be nominated for Best Picture, it also had to introduce some characters who will be incredibly important to the MCU's future and set up the next phase of the story. And beyond any of that, it has to honor the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, who even in his short time was able to leave a huge lasting impression on the MCU. First and foremost, Wakanda Forever is a story about grief, and that emotional core is what makes the film so effective. The story of this film is that 1 year after the death of T'Challa, Wakanda must face pressure from the rest of the world as well as attacks from the new undersea nation of Talokan. The first thing I should mention is that this film feels a lot more personal than other Marvel movies, and this is clear from the very first scene of the film. As I previously said, this film is a story about grief and loss, and it rarely loses sight of that. Almost everything is there to serve that narrative, which keeps the film from feeling like it's stuffing too much into its runtime. Most of the time, we'll get to that later. By far the biggest example of this in the film is Namor. When it was first announced that Namor would be the villain of this movie, I was a little bit skeptical because I didn't want Namor's introduction to intrude on this being a tribute to Chadwick Boseman. Namor's story in this film serves as a stellar parallel to the film's protagonist, and he was definitely one of my favorite parts of the film, especially his dynamic with Shuri. Everyone in the cast delivers a great performance. The standouts for me were definitely Angela Bassett as Queen Ramonda and Tenoch Huerta as Namor, but everyone else is amazing as well. Another thing that I really loved about this film was its visuals. The film is ripe with colorful cinematography that brings life to everything around it. Beyond just the cinematography, the action in the film is incredibly entertaining to watch. One standout moment was the attack on Wakanda, which used slow-mo in a way that made the scene visually stunning. Not to mention that in these sequences, the characters move with such fluidity, whether it be the Black Panther or especially Namor with the wings on his ankles. I mean, look at him go! He's just so cool! That's all the stuff that I really loved about the film, but now it's time for a few nitpicks. First of all, the film's subplot with Everett Ross feels pretty unnecessary and doesn't further the film's story except for, of course, setting up for the future of the MCU, but it takes up such a small amount of the overall runtime that it isn't a huge deal to me at least. Another thing is that a lot of the characters in the film aren't given a lot to do. M'Baku appears in a scene towards the beginning of the film and is then absent until the end of the second act. Okoye is also absent for a decent amount of the second act, but definitely has more to do in this film as a whole. And Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, is there for pretty much the entire movie, but really doesn't do much until the final battle. She feels really underdeveloped, and they only hint at her having more character depth towards the end of the film. It's like if in Civil War, Tony just recruited Spider-Man at the beginning of the movie and then he just stood there until the final battle. Finally, this film makes a certain cosmetic choice in the final battle. It's not a huge deal, I just don't like what they did with it. I'll explain later when the film's been out for longer and I can spoil it for all of you. But other than that, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a truly great and personal film. Whether or not it's better than the first film is an incredibly tough call, but I think currently I'm leaning towards the first movie primarily because of Killmonger and of course Chadwick Boseman's irreplaceable performance. But I would say that Wakanda Forever is pretty much on par with the first film, which is why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10.
Wakanda Forever!
Oh, that makes me uncomfortable.